Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the artist and studio manager here at Baltimore Clayworks, and we are thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining from my office located on Piscataway and Susquehannock land, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual artist talk given today by Sean Clute. Sean has been focused on people that abuse their power to ostracize, influence other people in our society by showing that these negative behaviors are more systematic than pure flaws in their character. This allows the viewer to see a holistic view of how our society is interconnected. The way we treat each other echoes in this world. We are all connected through each other's interactions. Each of us influences the behavior of our society. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.org and tune in next week on Tuesday, October 22nd for an artist talk with Annie Braunschweig from 6:30 to 7 p.m. I will now turn it over to Sean.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So today I'm going to talk about my art practice and essentially explain how the evolution of my speech through my art landed into the piece that I had for isms, which you just heard the bio for that. So within currently I am teaching at University of South Carolina, teaching ceramics beginning, ceramics intermediate, wheel throwing intermediate, hand building, and advanced ceramics. I'm currently talking about other concerns in our society through the human form. And yes, I'm currently adjunct at University of South Carolina. And within my art practice, as you heard, where I am now, it really became a study of people around me and kind of through my own filter, understanding what I'm interested in as a person and what I felt like I can utilize figurative sculpture and communicating my thoughts. So it really became a study of how I actually ended up landing kind of in this interesting place, cross between acting and making, where I was able to, I say that I am kind of a director, producer, writer, and actor, but I just use clay to communicate all that. And so this is a very early stage in my career, and I will talk a little bit about what was my influence going into it. So I have a really strong journaling practice, artistic journaling, where I'm just essentially recording things that I'm interested in, things that catch my eye. And this is a very early stage of that journaling practice. And at an early stage, I was working retail at a mall, and which was objectively a tough job for me to do. But what happened is that I entered into this stage of recording the things that I saw, and I had a wonderful stimulus in front of me. Is that it was an indoor mall, and so you had this kind of highway of people moving in and out. And so I saw hundreds of people every day kind of passing through and even coming in. My manager would joke that I would print off receipt paper and write down notes on the receipt paper and just have 5 to 10 notes at the end of my shift. But what happened with this character that you see in front of you, it's called Window Shopper. What happened is that I saw this child in front of me that was really interested in one of our displays. And he was kind of just with his family. And he just was like super interested in what we displayed, all these things. And so he kept walking closer. Maybe I just imagined this. He just got closer and closer. And his family actually left and he kept looking at this thing. And I was just kind of like what compelled this person to be able to like just be single, kind of have like the borders on their eyes to be able to see that. He ended up, mom called him over and he left. But I used that situation and kind of expanded on it. And so what I did is that within this piece, I actually got him close at actually touching the window display. And so the next piece, you can see that is actually completely flat, right? And so within this, I was able to show the setting without having it actually there. And furthermore, this is actually the first time I really tapped into um, talking about societal concerns. And so instead of having just a physical barrier between the child and what they wanted, you can see that the clothes are tattered. And so I literally just rummaged through my closet and grabbed the kind of the most torn things I had. And I had all these kind of rings around my shirt. I had a hat. It was kind of my studio hat. I can kind of get all grunged up. And I just kind of communicated that notion. And what happened is that it's not just a physical barrier, but it's an economic barrier as well. And that was the first time I was able to connect the figure to the society as at large. And that was very gratifying for me. And this was me kind of just starting to step into doing folds. And so there was not just a concept involved, but it was really an exploration of just sculpting. And that's kind of what drew me in first was the act of sculpting, and then it was able to kind of communicate something big. Creating that plane in front of them. This next piece is was something that so I'm originally from suburbs of Chicago, and I was lucky enough to be able to get a residency at Little Street Art Center after undergrad. And through that, I was able to live downtown Chicago. And that was just such a blissful experience because I've always wanted to experience something I lived so close to for my growing up. And while I was on there, again, this is me journaling as much as I humanly can, possibly can. And I was on the train, the L, and there was an advertisement of using Uncle Sam. And so just like pointing, like, you should buy our product because something or the other. And what I did is I just recorded that. Just like, oh, Uncle Sam is really kind of, you're able to say something really direct about the government through that character. And I also wrote down, there is downtown, there's a homeless population, and coming from the suburbs, we didn't have much in the suburbs, and so that was something that growing up was a big contrast when I ended up living down there. So I just had that down, and I wanted to say something. When it really started with street performers, I really admire some of the talent that they had. But what it did, it kind of reduced down to someone just having a sign. And this is the first time I actually had words in a sculpture. And what happened is that as I was flipping through my journal, I noticed that I had Uncle Sam and a panhandler. And I said, oh, what if we put this together? And what happened is that I was able to talk about how the United States, we are in our budget, right? Because it talks about money. So through research, I found out that, and this was at the time, is that the United States spent about 20% more than we had, and but half of the budget was actually for military use. And so what happened is that half of what we were asking for was for the military. And so having Uncle Sam being a military icon, it kind of was a natural alignment within how the U.S. borrows money to pay for the military. And so within when I was sculpting it, I didn't have the wording quite right on the sign, and so I just kind of looked into what we were, as I was sculpting, kind of had that as something to solve. And what I kind of reduced it down to was certain sayings that would be American, certain type of intentions for the signs that I was researching and what was kind of aligned with that. And the purpose of having the largest military that the world's ever seen is essentially for control. And so that's what I wrote down: need money for control. And then a common American saying, God bless America. But what happened is that through posing for that, I ended up folding one of the pieces of cardboard back, and I kind of try to hide bless a little bit, and I kind of gave it a little bit less emphasis on this is like a noble endeavor, where this was, essentially kind of trying to have a little bit of subtlety within my commentary there. But I use his hat as something that someone can put money in. And again, just had this kind of a natural alignment within commentary. So within this, the eyes, thinking about someone sitting down. So I try to have them look upright at the viewer, and then kind of have being outside, a little bit more of a tan, weathered look to them. But this was actually, you don't really see it, but I actually had, so first time I actually went to a thrift store and got a costume. And so the body of it is actually me wearing a blazer, a vest, suspenders, pants, and nice shoes. And then I had a fellow studio mate just take photos of me within that. And so that was kind of the first time I really entered into kind of developing costumes. This piece was about soldiers coming home from a tour, and kind of the service of not just the soldier, but the people they're connected to. And I really wanted to show that there is not just one person, but a community behind the people that are putting their life on the line, and their bodies, and even their minds when they come back. And so what I wanted to do is kind of have this moment of reconnection. And what this did was I wanted to be able to have subtlety in the expression. And within this, it's kind of the notion of crying because you are so happy. And so it's kind of these secondary emotions. And so what I did is I actually ended up splitting the face in half, with having kind of a half of it in joyful, half of it in sorrow, and just kind of had this middle ground within the expression. And this was a little bit of an exploration within facial expressions. So, within how successful it is to be determined. But, I think within it, it really made me look into a deeper emotional state to my characters, and it found a lot of depth. And what happened is that I noticed that with the indirect expression, I felt like viewers can find their own place with it. I really didn't want to be so direct within the approach, where I'm just kind of funneling viewers into a place. And I think what happened as a result of this piece is that I ended up understanding that I just want to present information. Like, this is really a conversation with how I present the work is really how I present information in conversation. I'm just kind of introducing a topic, and hopefully the viewer can land in some place of their own but I think the point of the work is really to just have them think about it, right? Just introduce the topic, right? And so within this, I actually collaborated with my mom with the sign. And so she was a kindergarten teacher, and I wanted the girl to be able to have kind of common mistakes in the handwriting. And so I kind of, you tend to have consistencies in the mistake. And so I use some mistakes, like putting the Y backwards, or not having an E at the end of some words. And so I just kind of had these uh, uh, consistencies, which I wanted to be able to kind of show the personality through the writing, right? And how I organized this poster board was essentially the American flag. And so within that was an icon having the stars, and then the line work within the writing are the stripes of the flag. And furthermore, knowing that it's a military, is you're connecting the U.S. flag with the camo shirt, and then the blue skirt and red shoes. So you have red, white, and blue there as well. Another thing within that is that the shoes, I wanted to reference kind of the Wizard of Oz, like no place like home. And so that's the name of the piece is Home. So I really try to align as many things as possible with the message. And so within that, as you see, there's another element here, is that the woman's pregnant, right? And so what this did is it puts a little bit of obscurity within the approach, and it gives a timeline on it too. This was the first time I actually had something that was dealt with time. And so you kind of question, how long was the tour? And give another story line within one piece of information. So I really wanted to have these multiple veins in there, so a viewer can kind of explore and discover the piece in multiple different ways, right? And also, if you look at the hair, is that you kind of have this nice, lovely braid, but you see that they're dyed, and you see time within the hair growth. And so when you're pregnant, you can't dye your hair, and so you have this natural alignment within the pregnant belly, and then the hair. So you're throwing in behavior that would be common with reality. This camo was so fun to do, but it was so difficult. It had all these, it had about 4 tones in there. And so I developed a template that I kind of went over, I don't know how many times, I don't want to know the answer, but it was really great to finally be able to get that crisp, clean camo line work in there. Another thing is that, as you see that the right arm is on the child. And I literally had her falling over. Funny enough is that as I was sculpting, the piece leaning a little bit to the right, and the heel, or the foot actually came up because it was falling. So I actually supported it underneath. What I realized is that I could naturally have the heel come out of the shoe. And so I had this kind of knee, the right knee leaning, and so the heel's coming out of the shoe, which would be a natural act. And then she's actually leaning on the daughter for support. And I thought there was a really great natural conversation of, her supportive partner is away, and the taking care of the child. I know that some kids can actually fulfill part of the emotional support system in that way. So she's leaning on her physically, but she could be leaning on her emotionally as well. And so here you see that kind of split facial expression, where I was trying to have kind of in the middle, but yeah, tough to get those things right. But I think at a certain degree that it was successful and did communicate this kind of crying because I'm so happy. And this is the piece that's in the show Isms. And so this was that initial bio that they read, where it talked about a lot of, I entered into this space of talking about the environment and of people that kind of take advantage of our society in a negative way. And so it really becomes this nature versus nurture conversation where you might have a good nature, but if your nurture is just pointing you in a direction of negativity, it can result in a negative action. And so within this piece, I wanted to explore a little bit more of the systematic nature of our political system, where the pieces in gray are lobbyists within the political system, and then at the center is a politician. And so within, to kind of declare it as a politician, I put in the US seal that would be for Congress, and that would communicate that this person has this position. What I did is that, so the initial notion is that I was lucky enough to be able to have a really wonderful class in grad school where it was making comics. And so instead of having one scene, I was actually able to have a storyline in there that was multiple scenes long. And so in research comics, I really enjoyed political cartoons. And so the start of this was a political cartoon, and they are very direct within their communication. So I was thinking of having like the industry on their chest in some kind of plaque to be able to communicate it directly. And I actually researched a politician that I will not name, but I researched how that the industries that were, the industries that were lobbying for that politician had negative effects in those industries in that particular state. And so I wanted to make sure that that was aligned before I connected and spoke. So it wasn't something that I was just kind of putting out there. It was starting with truth and communicating that through the piece. What ended up happening is I pulled back on that directness and kind of learning from previous projects that having some ambiguity in it can help the viewer land in their own place. Also, by having a direct example, it kind of it takes away from what happens beyond that person. And and within the U.S. system, this happens on both sides on our binary political system, which I won't get into. But in the sense is that it's not an isolated act. And I think what this does, it puts more pressure on talking about lobbyists themselves than it does about the politician and their actions. And so you see that I have multiple people in the background there, kind of pointing at the viewer, pointing at the piece of paper that you see on the podium, and then you kind of have them like enticing them to come into this message, right? And so I wanted to have a little bit of softness within their visual representation. So I just put them on this kind of grayscale to kind of diffuse, almost like ghosts, where what you're really seeing is this kind of highlighted person with this really strong red tie. And we wanted that, and again, not to look into that too far, but within that is kind of the focal point of the piece. So I think within talking about the nurture of these characters' environment, it really expanded the dialogue and it made it a little bit more dynamic than just having a single figure in there. And this is a piece that I'm working on right now. This is actually, you can see right behind me. And so within this, this is right now, I'm just calling it grocery bagger. That's not going to and title of it. But within this, it first started with I worked at Natural History Museum in Chicago, the Field Museum, and working in a wood shop. And I installed and deinstalled all the exhibits there, which was a wonderful job. And I was lucky enough to be able to have a elder employee that has been there for 30 years and knew that museum like the back of his hand. It was like a really wonderful resource, and I learned a lot from him. But there were moments, because it was actually a high labor job and it was a professional wood shop. So I mean, we're moving heavy things, and at certain points, is that his physicality or the physicality of the job did not align with his ability as it did, maybe a decade before. And so what happened is that, unfortunately, he wasn't able to participate in a full capacity when we had to do some lifting, which was a lot of the job. And I kind of had this sensitivity to this disposition. And he's a very proud person, and it was really difficult to see someone not being able to fully participate in something that they really strongly identify with. And what I did is that use that situation, and I kind of put it in a new context. And so what I did is that I kind of made it into a little bit more of a common approach within this elder employee. And within my research, I saw that people that are over or 65 and older, 20%, 1 in 5 people are working. That was very different than what's been in the past. And I think what happens is that when you're able to tap into something that is happening on a quite a large scale and not in this microcosm, is that then you can speak in a little bit more universal tone. And so what I did is that I put this person into a grocery bagger position that's just handing off this grocery bag. And one of my notes is that when I was journaling, was actually just a grocery bag itself. I thought was quite interesting, as mundane as that might seem. But it was able. What I wrote down was that I was able to the bag communicated all the elements that were in there, but it was an opaque kind of plastic. And I thought that was quite interesting, that the form, you did not see what was in it, but the form communicated what was in it. So I just had that kind of as a piece that I had, which then I was able to throw it into this piece and kind of align these different interest sets. But as he's handing it on, he's kind of as he's passing along, he's just working. I mean, there's nothing too extra about it. What will happen is that I wanted to communicate further is that maybe a justification or a reason why he's working. And so what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to give him a medical wristband. I'm going to put gauze on his elbow, and maybe a bandage on his head, and I can kind of develop some bruising around those spots. And so I wanted to talk about Medicare. I mean, we're talking about why someone would actually need to work. And so it talks a little bit about another issue of supporting our elders in our community. And so, and I think what happens within this narrative is that it's not just this person that may have not have saved for retirement. Is this person had an event that they didn't know that was going to happen and forced them into this situation. And I think what happens with that, it kind of shows pitfalls in our society that, and I'm trying to highlight something like, hey, this could happen. This is happening there, where people are falling through the cracks, and this could happen to anyone. I mean, depending on the injury and depending on the severity of what you can do for work. I mean, it's a thing. And within this simple gesture of handing off a grocery bag, I think speaks to a greater volume of the impact of what these projects can do. So I think I am around at time for this talk. And I want to thank you all for listening, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to communicate my practice. So thank you, Baltimore Clay Works.